for a lot of people. So thank you. So my name is Thanh Nam Vo Duy. I'm the Vice President at Moët Hennessy USA for commercial development. And the first thing I want to do is I want to thank you. I want to thank you for spending this time. It's 5 p.m. West Coast for most of you. It's 8 p.m. East Coast, and you're spending time to learn and to invest in your career, and that makes you a leader. That makes you someone who's taking an action for themselves and to get ahead. So thank you and congratulations. We're going to talk about assertiveness today. And I am not an expert. I don't have a PhD in assertiveness. On the contrary, I would say that earlier in my career, I would really define myself as an introvert, as someone who I would say is even shy. And I've always been uncomfortable with conflict. I've always had a trouble saying no in the workplace. And I wanted to change that, but I didn't even know where to start. And I think that if you relate to this, if you feel that, like me, you most of the time you had great ideas, but you had trouble finding a voice and trouble being visible in the workplace, then hopefully what we'll talk about today will give you a place to start. So I'll be sharing my my ideas, the things that I've used in my career to work on that. You have here my information. Please contact me on LinkedIn anytime. And Karen will share the presentation. In the presentation, you have notes, and in the notes, you have some of the quotes I'm using, some of the links to the videos I'm using, and some of the general quotes. So you can check that out. Let's dive into the topic. Karen, you want to flip the slide? Thank you. So there's really a reason why this topic of assertiveness is personal to me. There was a moment in my career where I felt stuck, to be frank, and I felt like I was not making any progress. I did not know where I was going, and my career was at a standstill. My boss was not a really good boss, and I did a training, and it was a leadership training. And the first chapter of the leadership training was self-awareness. And the exercise that we're given coming out of this training was to do a sort of 360 feedback interviews. And so I went to talk to people who worked with me, a former boss, an intern that had worked with me, and a few colleagues. And I asked them, what shall I do more of and what shall I do less of? Which is quite a neutral way to ask for feedback. You know, it's not judgmental. It's not like, what am I good at or not, right? It's quite neutral. And I was shocked to hear that 5 of the 7 people that I talked to told me the exact same thing. They told me, Thanh Nam, you're smart and you always do the work. But so why are you so silent in meetings? Why are you emailing me after the meeting with a good idea once the decision has already been done, already been made? And that really bothered me. And that really made me think a lot, because my education, where I grew up in France from Vietnamese parents, and my Asian education is a lot about not drawing attention to yourself, right? My parents would say, speak only when you have something interesting to say. You're taught to respect your elders, right? You don't challenge your elders. You don't challenge the the hierarchy, right? The higher power. And in a way, that became a little bit my nature of being a little bit submissive. So who knows if it was really my nature, or because my culture, I was fed those things and I became those things. And I would argue that in society and the stereotypes that, you know, culture is giving us as Asian people, we are also told that we are that, right? And that becomes a little bit a vicious circle of, am I that because that's my nature or not? And frankly, at that moment, I had this idea that a leader in a corporation is that aggressive, very loud person, most often a man, and most often a white man. I mean, I want to say always a white man. And that was not me. I could not see myself in that. That was not me. I was other than this model. And so that's why it's personal for me, because in order to make progress in my career, I had to find a way to change that. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Karen, next slide. The biggest lesson for me before we get into the tips is about growth. What I've learned is that you don't really have assertive people, and then you put them in that corner here, and then people who are not assertive, and they're here. You don't really have born leaders that are here, and people who are never going to be leaders that are here. You exercise, anyone can exercise leadership in the right situation. Assertiveness is not who you are, it's a tool. So you don't have assertive people, you have people who use assertive communication in a particular situation, right? The same way people are exercising leadership in the right situation. And you can think of thousands of examples of, you know, the person who's maybe a little shy at work and they don't talk too loud. And then you see them at home and they're the captain of their soccer team, or they're the head of their choir at church. Or you have the person who's like really aggressive at work or assertive. And you see them in a personal situation and with their spouse, they're being ordered around, right? You see that. So I think, you know, we all have in us those different elements, and it's a matter of dialing them up and dialing them down in different situations. And what that means is that anything can be learned. You can learn to be assertive. You can use habits, tips, things that you can do once, you can do twice, and then it becomes a habit, and little by little, you're used to do it. And that is a lot of work, right? To be clear, it requires to do it and to be dedicated to it, and it's not always comfortable, right? But it is absolutely something that anyone can do. And I am here to tell that story, right? So that is why I'm talking to you today. So it's about growth. And I would say that if there's one thing today that you hear that inspires you, one exercise that for you is like, okay, I can do this. One thing that you can take and apply in the workplace, take it, you know, do it once, do it several times, practice it, and it will be a seed that grows. All right, so let's go into more of the meat. I want to talk about this before anything else. Is there are situations where it's absolutely critical to be assertive and to say no, and it's okay to say no, right? If you feel that the instinct is sounding an alarm, if you are given something to do and you don't have the skill or you don't have the time, it's okay to say no. It's always okay to raise your hand and ask for help. When it's against your morals, when it's illegal, and when it's not safe. And I want to say when it's not safe, it's always okay to say when you're uncomfortable. Sexual harassment is an example of a situation where you should be assertive, and you hopefully your instinct will help you say no. All right, so just a little bit of a little bit of information on that, because I think it's important and we don't always say that. All right, tip number one. Tip number one is play the part. There's a speaker that I like a lot. She's the vice chairman, managing director of at Morgan Stanley. Her name is Carla Harris, and she's a woman. She's Black, and she talks about advancing your career. And there's I love to watch her YouTube talks, and in one of them, which the links will be in the notes of the presentation, she says perception is the co-pilot of reality. Most of the important decisions about your career, promotions, assignments, compensation, usually happen when you're not in the room. Right? So the way people perceive you, what people say about you, really is critical to your career advancement. And for me, I think it was difficult because I did not have a role model, right? I did not have someone that I could look up to and say, that person is like me and I want to be that. As I said, in corporate America, if you're not a man and not white, you're statistically not going to be at the top, right? So it's difficult to find that. And what I try to do is that whenever I saw a manager or leader that had something that I could relate to, I would really try to identify that and then copy it, right? How does that person summarize a meeting at the end? How does that person address a problem? How does that person speak in front of people, or even how they say hello to a group, right? And I would try to take that and copy it. And that's the point of playing the part, because the more you give that perception, you give that image, the more you are that person. I have often been said, you should behave and you should make decisions like your boss, right? So in order to get your next job, right? So for each of the tips, I'm giving a little practical exercise. It's a way to hopefully give you something that you can do that is, practical. So think of a person that you see at work that is assertive. Watch how they talk, what they look like, how they stand, and try to copy that. Record yourself. I know nobody likes that, but record yourself giving a talk, preferably something that is not very important. It can be, talking about your vacation or your favorite childhood memory, and emulate, copy those behaviors. Watch it, feedback, improve, do it again. That was tip number one. Now, number two, Zoom presence. I smile because not many of you are on camera right now. In our world today, being assertive is not with your physical presence, right? You're on the screen this big, and enhancing your Zoom presence is a very easy way to gain more presence, more confidence, and being more part of the conversation, right? Having a seat at the table. So the simple tips for that is look into the camera, right? Don't present your spreadsheet by looking at your other screen like this, right? Look in the camera, set up your spreadsheet so that it's right there, so that you still get the eye contact of talking to a real person. Interact when you speak to people. Try to ask questions. Are you with me? Are you following any question about this? Or ways to interact. Speak clearly and slowly. It's a way to make sure that people understand you. If you have a French accent, that helps, right? That adds that little flair, right? If needed, use enhanced sound and light. So you can buy on Amazon those lights that you put on the screen that helps having an image that's much better. Some people use a microphone that they plug onto their PC, and those are easy ways to enhance your presence and become more assertive in your communication. Practical exercise: record a fake Zoom meeting, whether it's an interview or asking for a raise or presenting a project. You can practice it and rehearse it, and you can work with your mentor, work with a friend to give you feedback. True story, when I asked for a raise, I have rehearsed and practiced that speech, and I have recorded it and watched it. I did not like what I saw. Nobody likes to see themselves on video. But that was a way to just get better at it. Now, number 3. That one I like a lot. That's something we don't talk about a lot, which is the way you say your name. Assertiveness, asserting yourself, comes the first thing that you do when you speak to someone is saying your name. And I found this really cool speech. That's a TEDx at Penn. This Dr. Laura Sicola. She's a communication expert and influence expert. She's a speaker and author. And she talks about mastering your leadership voice. And what she says is the way you say your name is the first thing that establishes your voice and what you say and your person. I know that because my name has 2 silent H's, it's 4 words, nobody knows which one is the first name, the last name, etc. When I was working in France and I would say my name, people would be like, oh, too difficult, like I'm gonna walk away, right? And I've learned to be more confident saying my name. And so what Laura Sicola talks about is there is a kind of rhythm of saying your name. It's first name, last name. My name is Thanh Nam Vo Duy. And establishing this is a way to really put your presence there and sound assertive. So again, little practical exercise. Something very simple to do is to practice to say your name, and use it every day, use it in meetings, use it whenever you introduce yourself as a way to establish your assertiveness from the very start. Number 4, insert to assert. This one I made up myself. And it's about this moment. I'm sure it has happened to you. It happens to me all the time, which is you are in a meeting and you have something to say and you don't know when to interject. Like people are talking and then you wait until the end of the meeting and everyone is trying to say something at the end to put their contribution, and you maybe everyone is more senior than you and it's difficult to interject, right? That is something you can practice. First of all, there are words you can use, right? So what are the words to interject? You can say yes. and people will stop talking. You can say, you are right, I agree. You can say their name. So if Karen is talking and she's in her flow, I can say, Karen, she's going to stop. And I say, I agree with you. My contribution would be to that there's this other idea that is great, blah, blah, blah. And there you have made your contribution. You have made your point. Other ones are, well, this is great. And many other ways to interject. I've been in meetings where even like coughing or doing is enough, right? So it's not rocket science. You just need to find the right thing to interrupt. So practical exercise, practice interrupting someone politely during next meeting. And I would say, you know, I'm big on challenging yourself with little things. So I've been when I was trying to do that more, I would go into a meeting, and whatever the meeting was, I would say, okay, I'm going to do 2 polite interruptions right today, and I would do that, challenge myself to do it, and doing 2 was more than 0 and more than 1. So I did 2, and then the next meeting maybe I did 3, and then I did more and more on that. So to practice. Number 5. This one I love is establishing your voice early. If you're like me, you have experienced those meetings where the meeting runs long, you reach towards the end, and you have not made your point. And you are there, and you're like, I really have something to say, but it's too late, and it's not a good feeling. And what I've learned is that when you speak early in the meeting, whatever you say, right? When you speak early in the meeting, it's easier later on in the meeting to add something or to say something, right? And so the trick is to say something early in a meeting, and it doesn't have to be a very intelligent contribution about the business, right? I don't know if you've noticed, executives, when they start a meeting, they walk into a meeting room, usually they chat, right? Hey, how was your golf game this weekend? You know, how's your house in Connecticut? Whatever, right? There's like a lot of chit-chatting. And you know what I realized is that these people are as uncomfortable as you and me in those meetings. And what they do is that they use chit-chatting to soften the stress, right? And to establish their voice by talking, by speaking, by introducing themselves to people, right? So once the meeting starts, they have already talked to 3 people. They have already, their voices out there. And it's interesting because it's like a metaphor, right? If you speak early, you establish your voice, you're really establishing your space, you're in the meeting, right? You're establishing your space in the world, I would say, right? So that's something that I've used, and I've used that specifically when I knew there was someone that I was trying to impress in the room. So if the head of HR is in the room, and if the CEO is in the room, you can bet that I'm going to try to be the first one to ask a question, right? Any presentation, speaking, company call, whatever, right? There's always a Q&A, right? And the people who ask questions, well, they introduce themselves. So, hey, I'm Thanh Nam, I work in this department, blah, blah, blah. So all of a sudden the head of HR knows who I am and the CEO knows who I am. And because I'm probably as smart as half of the room and smarter than half of the room, whatever I will say will probably be smarter than most people. And because most people don't want to speak up, then all of a sudden I give the perception of me as a smart person, right? So this is something that I try to task myself. That takes a little bit of practice, but it works. Tip number 6. So presentation skills, public speaking. Everybody hates public speaking. We have the Toastmaster program at the APA. It's probably the most transformative training that I did was to learn to speak in public. And before the training, I didn't like that, and most people don't like that. But with the training, I realized that it's something you can learn. When you see someone speak well, you really think that it's a gift. You really think that it's a talent that they have. And people say that, oh, he's so charismatic, he's such a good speaker, right? Like as if it's like another class of people. But really, you can learn it. And I recommend that you do whatever you can to learn the skill. Some of the techniques that I personally use is smile. I always try to smile because it creates a human contact. When I lose my word, I don't know what I'm saying, I have an answer, I don't have an answer, I smile first, gives me a little bit of time to think, and then I answer. So smile, always be prepared. Of course, it's better to prepare a speech than improvise it. Breathing is an amazing skill, and we all do it. We just need to practice it. So when I train to talk and speak in public, I use breathing. It's a way to really emphasize words. It's a way to have a rhythm that is more emphatic. And so you learn those techniques and you practice them. And I can tell you, it's for me, it was transformative, really. Practical exercise with your mentor. You can record a presentation and ask him to give you feedback, whether it's on Zoom or in person. In person is different game because you have to stand, you don't know where your hands are going, etc. So it's a different thing. Okay, tip number 7. Question instead of saying no. I've been using that a lot for situations where there's a disagreement, right? What do you do when you disagree with someone and it's hard to, let's say it's a negotiation or it's hard to make your point across? I've seen that asking question works pretty well. So the little questions are, for example, are you saying that blah, 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 blah? It sounds like you're saying that blah, 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 correct? And it's a good way to disagree without sounding negative. And it's a good way to assert a point of view. So practical exercise. Think of a tough conversation when you needed to assert yourself, maybe get a project that somebody didn't want to give to you, or ask for a promotion, and practice by responding without saying the word no, and by questioning. And we're getting to the last one, number 8, which is a pretty easy one, is words to use, words to avoid. It's a pretty classic one. You've heard that before. Saying I instead of you, saying and instead of but. That's something that is very easy to practice with your spouse, with your friends, in any casual conversation. You can actually replace the word but and put and instead of it. And it's quite powerful, and it's a good way to communicate clearly. So in summary, we have play the part, work on your Zoom presence, and for that you have to be on video. Say your name correctly. I think that's a pretty cool one. Insert to assert, so practice those little interjections for interrupting or saying something in a meeting. Establish your voice early. Remember, it's always harder when you wait until the last minute to make your point. Practice or learn presentation skills. You know, ask my friends Karen and Francis about the Toastmaster program. Use questions instead of saying no, and use words like and instead of but. To finish, I just want to say that I think we all have a responsibility to be assertive. When you are non-white, because what we do when we speak, when we have a voice, can help others, right? Because we have people who are watching us, and they are younger generations, and they are maybe wondering what is the model for us, for them, right? As you know, anti-Asian crimes has not decreased, even though the press doesn't talk about it anymore, right? The stats are still there. So even outside of the workplace, it is our collective responsibility to speak up and to have a voice and to have a place in the corporate world, but also in the world in general. Thank you. That's it for the 8 tips. And let's see if we have any questions.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you, Thanh Nam. That was so great. Really, really, really appreciate you going through those 8 tips. Wow, learned a lot. And I know most of the time, I've said this before in other idea talks, where I, as an Asian American woman, right, I tell folks that we have to channel our mediocre white man when we're in meetings, because most of the time, you know, for myself, speaking from experience and personal experience, I'm always thinking, should I say this? Should I say that? How am I going to be perceived? You know, A, as a woman, A, do I have too much energy? Are folks going to think of me differently if I make this comment? But if I were a mediocre white man, I would not be thinking of all these things. So I should just say it. So that's my tip for folks. And I know that there are lots of questions coming through, lots of comments coming through in the chat. So let me go through there and double check if anyone has a pressing question. Let's see. And if you have questions, go ahead and pop them in the chat now. What we're going to do is use this time to have Thanh Nam answer your questions. So if you have some questions with the tips or anything that, you know, Thanh Nam mentioned, please go ahead and pop that into the chat. So thank you all so much. Yes, assertiveness is a tool. Thank you for that. Let's see. Practice asserting yourself. Great plug for Toastmasters. That's right. So if folks have any questions on Toastmasters, I did share AAPA's link. I'll share that again at the end with some resources. And are there any other words to avoid besides you and but? Carl asked. So Thanh Nam, are there any other words?
Yeah, so my answer to that is not so much words, but to me, I always try to stay away from judgments, right? So there's a very different, you can describe a reality by saying it in a way that is good or bad, or you can describe a reality by saying very factually that is there, right? And I don't know, I'm just thinking of an example about like when I was asking people feedback about myself. If you say, what am I good at, and what am I not good at, the answer to the first part, okay, you're good at, I don't know, presentation. And what am I not good at is already a judgment. It's gonna, whatever they say, it's gonna be something that is a judgment on you, which you never, I feel that you never really wanna put people in a position of judging them, or you or them judging you. And if you say, what should I do more of? What should I do less of? It's just a fact. You don't do. You should do less of something because you do it now, and you should do less of it. It's a little bit more subtle.
And it's a daily practice, like you said, right? So those practical exercises, practicing that little by little, and just having that self-awareness to know, oh, I do say that a lot. It's like, yeah, but, and then you to continue. So just practicing daily, and then having that self-awareness to catch yourself when you are doing that, and then just slowly inserting the replacements back in.
Yeah, and I'm thinking also everyone, all of us, when we talk, we have those little things that we say that are not words. I say, you know, right? And you hear those only if you record yourself. It's quite difficult to eliminate that. The way to eliminate that is to be very aware of your breathing, actually, because those are actually taking the spot and the place and the time of a breath. So that's more like presentation and speaking skill, but that's also something it's good to avoid.
And thanks for bringing that up. Toastmasters, it's funny because they'll have an counter. So you'll present, and at the end of the Toastmasters meeting, they'll say, oh, you had 5 ums and 2 ahs, and you're like, oh man, did I? So that's always really interesting. And again, it's practice, right? So Belinda asked, what other questions to ask instead of saying no? So I guess what kind of questions, right, Belinda? So what are some of the questions that you would ask Thanh instead of no?
Instead of saying no, yeah. So instead of a negative answer, I like to rephrase. I like to say in my own words what the person says and say, do I understand that correctly? And it's a way to connect with the person. It's a way to create a bridge because you're putting it in your own words. So I like to rephrase. And usually, because we're all humans and our brains are so complex that and we're all different, there's absolutely no way that you will rephrase in your own words in exactly the same way. It will be different. And that creates a dialogue, and that creates the start of a negotiation. That creates the start of some connection. So rephrasing and asking, that's the sort of question that I would use when I disagree and I want to say no, but I want to discuss it.
Yeah, and I think when you were talking about this tip, I heard you say, so what I'm hearing is, and I think I do that too, where it's just like, so what I heard you say is, and I kind of recap what I don't want to do that this person said. And then they go, yeah, that's what I'm, asking you. So can you do it? Like, well, it sounds like you want me to do this task that I have limited time to do. And we have this, and this coming up. So that might not work out when it comes to capacity. So just kind of like rephrasing that, right? So thank you for that. And those are good tips. It's not straight out saying, no, we can't do this. It's rather, so what I'm hearing is, and what I think you're leaning toward is this, right? And then just like you said, reframing that. So that's a good way to kind of turn a negative to a positive in a sense, and just reframing that conversation. So thank you for that. And Eugene says, merci beaucoup. What's your favorite bottle of champagne, Thanh Nam? Did I say that right?
Yes, well, you know, there's many champagnes in my work family that are the kids that I all love. You know, with the same level of love. To me, I have a personal connection with Dom Perignon because it is a bottle that my parents opened for Christmas, and it's a tradition. So there are probably better, there are better champagnes, there are more expensive champagnes, there are champagnes with a different style, but that personal emotional connection really makes it for me. And for anyone who works in like luxury goods, you know that an emotional connection is part of why we make those purchases.
Mm-hmm. And it's always that meaningful connection, right? So if you have that personal story, it just means so much. And that's a way to, like you said, connect with folks. So thank you for sharing. Gabe asked, what's a good way to tell a person that that she, or especially he, talks way too much? So if a person goes on and on and on a few times, so what's a good way for you to kind of interject, I think, and stop that person from talking?
Well, I would say you can still interject, and you can still, it's almost like catching the train. I would say the metaphor, it's catching the train. If the person talks, etc., I can say, yes, you're right, absolutely. And then there's probably a little bit of overlap, right? Well, he or she is talking and you are talking too. But then it's going to be very difficult for a person to watch you speak and continue to speak, right? They're probably going to stop. So it requires a little bit of interjecting and talking over a little bit. But I think depending on the tone, if you say you agree completely and you are reinforcing their point, they're not going to be offended, and then you kind of take over the microphone, if you will.
Yes, thank you for that. And I think it is a good practice, right? Insert, right? To assert. So find that place where you're like trying to insert and kind of let the train come to a nice pause versus an extreme halt, right? And also not trying to offend folks. Because some folks are very passionate, right? Trying to share their story. And there is, time and place. I know I've been told that, and it's just, I try to take it as professional criticism, right? Sometimes, especially on Zoom, we have only so many minutes to spare. So really focusing in on your points that you're trying to make helps you. And when folks call it out and you don't have that self-awareness, it lets you know, oh, I do talk too much. Let me regather my thoughts and make sure I only take a certain amount of minutes. So it is helpful. And there are some comments here that are in French. I'm not even going to try to read them. I'm going to leave them for you, Thanh Nam. And just last question from Francis here. Do you find it helpful to I'm assuming down speak when you assert your statement or ask the question?
Can you clarify for me, what do you mean by down speak?
Lower your tone.
To lower your tone.
To ask a question?
Question or making statements. I mean, we will have a tendency, the tone get higher and higher as you talk. And you mentally try to keep your tone down. Do you find it useful or not?
Yes, to me personally, I think it's more about rhythm. I think it's more about speed. I think as I speak, I tend to get faster and faster. And I find it very useful in some circumstances to slow down what I say, because it becomes much, much, much more impactful.
Thank you for sharing, Thanh Nam.
Go
ahead.
The point, I think, is more, once you learn to control, to be aware, what is your tone? Are you speaking like this, or are you speaking like this, or do you have a rhythm that is very calm? Or are you just trying to get something across and you're not very clear? If you can have just the awareness of it, then you can use it. And I think that's what's key. So in your question, Francis, I think it's very it's a very good question. I think it's going to depend on people, but if you can't control the tone, if you can't control your rhythm, then you will be a better speaker.
Thank you, Thanh Nam. And I think that is helpful. I think when I first started presenting, I still kind of do. I talk really fast, but I try to pronunciate now when I talk really fast, but I have slowed down a little bit. So also breathing, right? And keeping that pace so folks are able to follow what you're saying. So thank you for sharing that. Breathing does come in handy. Belinda asked another question. How do you create connections quickly with people over Zoom?
That's a good question. I think we're all trying to figure out, first of all, I think we've all learned to do that, to create connection quickly through Zoom. It's going to depend very much on the circumstance, right? Is it a meeting? Is it one speaker? Who's in charge? What are you trying to get out of the situation? I think that depending, I don't know the specifics of your question, but whether you're a manager, whether you're hosting the meeting or you're not, it's always a good idea to have introductions if people in the room are not known, right? That is number one. If it's more a working session where it's going to be brainstorming, you're going to have people to be asked to work really together, etc. You can use the icebreakers, right? So say something about themselves. That there's many Google icebreakers. I'm sure you're going to find a few things. That's also why we did the Asian food question, because we all love Asian food, but also because it's a way to personalize and create connections for sure. I would also say be yourself. Be yourself. Speak about, be authentic. Talk about what you like. Talk about how you connect with people. Like, for example, Eugene had very clear questions about champagne, and he has a background. So that's something I know about Eugene, right? And that's memorable, and that's also a way to advance your career by advance who you are, right? Being known for something.
Absolutely. And I think that was also what you mentioned too, being the first one to ask a question, right? Knowing that we're going to have a Q&A, putting those questions in there, and then you remembered Eugene's name. And same thing with me reading names off, Carl asking a question, and folks also commenting in French. I think it's Mathilde, I'm sorry, she said, bravo, Thanh Nam, and then the rest is in French. So I'm not sure what that is, but I'm sure they're great comments. Same thing with Amara, so thank you. Another one from Cindy here. Eugene and I just realized we went to college together. Oh, amazing random reunion. Thanks to AAPA. Absolutely. And that's another thing, right? Bringing in that personal connection and folks popping in on video. Most of the time, you don't know you're actually attending the exact same event until you see each other on camera, especially now during a pandemic. We used to, right, go into a workshop or an event. And you're like, oh, I didn't know you're part of this, organization. Now it's like, oh, I see you on Zoom. Hello, let me send this person a DM. So it's always nice. And I think that is a great way to personally connect. Those silly check-in questions, are just silly, but they're also, a way for folks to connect, and for some folks, they might not have known, what pho was or what beef stew is, right? Or any of that. So it is also another way where you can also connect with other folks here, right? So you can send a direct message to anyone that's attending this event and connect with them. But yes, thank you all for attending this event. I do want to share some resources. Of course, thank you so much, Thanh Nam, for being our speaker here today. Really, really appreciate you sharing your personal stories and your personal knowledge and these great steps to be more assertive in business. But I don't think it's just business. It's in life, right? In general, just to say your name, right? And I didn't notice that I was doing that. I was saying my name the way I thought I would say my name when I introduced folks. And I was like, hi, I'm Karen Leung. And I actually was like, oh, I follow that rhythm Thanh Nam was talking about, Karen Leung. So I was like, whoa. that's assertive. I'm assertive. So there's that. So thank you, Thanh for sharing all that, and of course taking your time and coming into this space with us and sharing this space with us. We really appreciate it. It's 3 hours ahead for Thanh on the East Coast, and for folks who are chiming in with us on the East Coast, thank you. I did share a link for y'all to share feedback with us. So we do take feedback very seriously, and we also want to provide you what you want, right? So it's another way for us as an organization to be community informed. So if you liked what you saw and you want to see more or suggest other topics, right, bring Thanh back, let us know in the feedback form. It really, really does help us as a very small organization. And so I do want to share that we have another AAPA Idea Talks coming up on the 23rd. And this one is going to be about career transitions. So stay tuned for that. And I know folks were also interested in Toastmasters. So like I mentioned, we have 3 programs: our mentorship program, our board leadership program, and our Toastmasters. The next one coming up is on, Saturday 28th. I think that there is another one on the 11th. But you can email Quinn. So I put Quinn's email in there for you as well. And then again, you can stay in touch with us, AAPA, Asian American Professional Association. I'm copying way too many things to pop in here. I am so sorry. Multitasker, added stuff here. Here you go. There's our website. And of course, connect with Thanh on LinkedIn. You can find all of us on LinkedIn. That's mostly where we are on social media. But connect with us. There's Thanh link there. Again, I am Karen Leung. I am the Director of Operations, so you can find me on LinkedIn as well. And feel free to connect with each other. Here's my email if you have any questions. I'll also follow up because Thanh is so amazing. He wants to share his presentation with you all with his notes and his links and his resources. So how cool is that? I will send you all an email with Thanh slides and his